Hello, it's me, Arden Lee, and today I want to talk about the fact that you have every right to leave a connection that is not serving you, and you don't owe anybody an explanation. Now, before I get into that, if you don't know me already, if you haven't seen my other videos, I am Arden Lee. I am the creator of the Repatterning Project, and if you want to learn a little bit more about that, it is a community and an 8-week course. And you can go to the description box below and you can download the free PDF guide that'll teach you about the repatterning modality. You can also click the link to join our community on Facebook, where you can interact with me and other like-minded people who are all about optimizing their beliefs for success and happiness. So without further ado, there was this great post on Facebook the other day that someone wrote. I don't remember the name, and she was basically saying how she was taught by her mom when she was still a little girl who was going to sleepovers that she could leave somewhere she wanted to leave at any time. Her mom would drop her off and say, if at any reason, for any reason, at any point in the night, you don't want to be there anymore, just call me. It doesn't matter what hour of the night it is. I will pick up the phone and I will come drive and get you. So sure enough, she goes to a sleepover and there are some kids who are like bullying her, being mean to her or whatever, and it gets to be like it's kind of late at night, and she goes to the mom of the person who was at the house, whose house it was, and she said, all right, I need to call my mom. I want to go home. And the other person's mom was like, are you sure? It's so late. And she's like, no, my mom told me that I can call at any point and she'll come and pick me up. So sure enough, her mom comes and picks her up, and the mom whose house everyone is at is apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry that she called you so late. I don't know what happened or whatever. And the mom, who was the person making the post's mom, who was getting picked up, said, don't apologize for my daughter wanting to leave. She has every right to. I told her she could call whenever, and she's always allowed to leave. So this applies to more and more in our adult lives nowadays. When we're kids, we're often taught that we can't leave situations because we are dependent on people like our parents, our major caregivers, to shuffle us from one place to another, right? Because we don't have driver's licenses. And if you grew up with divorced parents, like me, you were also beholden to a custody schedule. Now, for me in particular, this belief was especially programmed into me because I actually tried to emancipate myself from my biological father when I was 14 years old. I began the process when I was 14. My mom did anyway. Again, I was a minor. Maybe there's a way to actually emancipate yourself. I've heard of other people doing that since then. But for me and my mom, that was just about my mom suing for full custody and me writing a letter to my dad and also speaking with the lawyers and ultimately the judge and saying, this is what I want. I've asked my mom to do this because my father is abusing me and I don't want to be there. And it took almost a year for it to go to court. It took about 10 months, if I recall correctly, which is probably the longest 10 months of my life. Because in the interim, I had to continue going to see my father, who I just told that I never wanted to see again in my life because he was abusing me. And, abusers don't like to be confronted with the fact that they're abusing you. They love to just think that, that they're that it was your fault, or that they're angry for reasons that are totally justifiable, or in my case, that it was my mom's fault that he was so angry and taking it out on me. So it finally got to court, and basically the judge didn't believe me. She didn't believe that the situation was bad enough that it actually warranted my not being around my father anymore. So she basically kept the custody schedule exactly the same. So there I am, age 15 by that point, and I have an adult telling me, no, you cannot choose where you get to be. You don't get to not be in the same room as your abuser. I graduated high school, I turned 18. I was about to graduate high school, And I've finally, I spent that last custody weekend there. And I got out of the car and I closed it behind me. And like, I'll never forget, I'll never forget that feeling of being like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm 18 and I finally get to decide where I'm going to actually be, where my physical body gets to be. So, so sure enough, I went into like, a 4.5 year period of not speaking to my biological father ever again after that. I called him, I told him, I was like, no, you knew this when I was 15. I haven't wanted to be here the whole time. I don't like you. You abuse me. And no, now I'm an adult and I get to make my own choice, and no, goodbye. And in addition to that, my father threatened my high school administration. He called them up and threatened the nuns at my private Catholic school, and said, you have to give me a ticket to my daughter's graduation, because if you don't, I'm going to take out a full-page ad in the Philadelphia Inquirer, I grew up around Philly, and saying that your school prevents a father from attending his own daughter's graduation or whatever. And so sure enough, they gave into his bullying. They gave him a graduation ticket, and I said, okay, you guys have fun. I'm not going to be there. So I skipped my high school graduation. And everyone, it was so funny, like all of my teachers and all the nuns at the time were like, are you sure that this is what you like this is your graduate? No, motherfucker. I am now I'm now well into my adulthood, and I am so proud of that decision. I am so happy that I did not go to my graduation, because it was the first time in my life that someone tried to say, you have to be in a room with this person, and I said, oh fuck no, I don't. I do not whatsoever. You don't have to be anywhere that you don't want to be. Unfortunately, as I grew up, I didn't realize how deep this belief was, and I still have, even to this day, a bit of conflict avoidance around leaving a connection if I feel somehow indebted to someone, or like it's somehow like if there's history there, whatever it is. So earlier today, I sought out some advice, because it seems like, there is a connection in my life that is no longer serving me, that maybe hasn't been serving me for some time, in a way that I've sort of been denying, because it would have been very convenient to just keep everything the same. And I made excuses for this person, and I said, oh, they're just like that. It's just, it's just their way. Like, don't pay them any mind or whatever. It's fine. It's just their sense of humor or whatever. Don't let me ever make excuses for people like that ever again, because anytime I ever say that, it's always bad news, right? Oh, well, they're just like that. It's just this. What? No. Absolutely not. Absolutely fucking not. So I got on the phone with someone whose opinion I really trust, someone who's a friend and collaborator of mine, and I asked their advice, and I said, what should I do about this, and what should I, if I do, and he basically said, yeah, this is clearly a connection that is not serving you, essentially, and you have every right to move on from this. And I was like, how do I do that? What would you recommend that if you were in this position, how would you handle that? What would you say? I was like, okay, good, I agree with you. I'm glad it's not just all in my head. And what would you say? And he said to me, he was like, you don't owe them an explanation. Just say, just say what it is. Say, you're deciding to do something different, or, whatever it is. And thanks very much. And sorry for the inconvenience or whatever, but it is what it is. And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. I don't owe anyone an explanation. And I think that's something that we forget a lot, that we're allowed to leave the slumber party. We're allowed to just walk out. We're allowed to, I went into a Rite Aid the other day after having done some grocery shopping. So I was like holding a shopping bag in my hand already. I was holding like a paper grocery store bag, and I walked into a Rite Aid, and I realized that the thing I had gone in there for was not really the thing that I wanted, and it was like overpriced, and I didn't want to buy it. And I felt this weird, like, am I allowed to leave the Rite Aid with a shopping bag already in my hand that clearly says Vons on it, but Like, am I allowed to just walk out without making a purchase? And the answer is, of course I can. You know, like, of course I am. I was like, I have my receipts if they're suspicious or whatever. You know, I'm not actually stealing anything. You know, I'm like, even then, like, I make this really friendly eye contact with the security guard on my way out, like, bye, have a nice night. I'm not stealing anything from you, you know, whatever. You're allowed to walk out, you know? You're allowed to, you're allowed to not do the thing as soon as you see that the thing is something that you don't want to do. And, you know, certainly for your long-term relationships, certainly long-term friendships and intimate relationships, of course, I advocate, if possible, you know, letting someone know that something is wrong and giving someone an opportunity to improve, you know. But if it really is, if it really comes down to a flaw in someone's character, a repeated behavior that is hopeless, a conversation that you've already tried to have with them that they weren't open to, you know, whatever that is, you know, you don't owe that person an explanation. You know, an abusive situation, you know, if you're even, it could be a really long relationship, and if they're, you know, if they're not open to that conversation, then you don't owe them anything, you know. And, you know, even with friendships, I've had friendships in the past where I've looked at things and, you know, sometimes, you know, like I said, I'll give people an opportunity to change, or I'll say, like, hey, what's going on, or whatever. But ultimately, I know that there are people out there that I have left friendships with who have a way different story in their heads about what went on than my version is. And the answer to that situation is just like, what they think of me is none of my business. You know, I know my own truth. I know why I left that connection. I know what was going on. I know what my problem with it was. And that's enough for me. So just remember that whatever is going on in your life, you are allowed to leave. You know, you're allowed to leave. And the fact that when we're kids, we spend so many years not being allowed to leave places, that it gets ingrained into us, and we feel this weird guilt around it, or this weird, you know, whatever it is. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to sever connections. You don't owe anyone an explanation if you are doing what is right for you. And even if they are someone who, for whatever reason, is left confused or hurt, again, what they think of you is none of your business. You are allowed to leave at any time. So do that. And check out the Repatterning Project if all of this is interesting to you. This is absolutely among the topics that we discuss, and I would love to see you in our community. So I'll see you in the next video.